So yeah, welcome everybody to OK Positive's Roundtable on men's mental health. I'm really pleased to be joined by many great individuals and organisations willing to talk about their mental health, but also the stigma surrounding men's mental health and things we can do, actions, resources, support that we can take from this and hopefully share with a wide following and make proactive change in this space as it is becoming more and more prominent for men to be talking about mental health. So first, a kick-off, let's everyone get to introduce themselves. So if we start with Steve, if you could tell us a bit more about yourself, the organisation and what you do, and then we'll kind of go rounds and go from there.
Yeah, definitely. Good to meet you all, guys. I'm Steve Whitton. I'm the founder of an organisation called Menable, and we are, or were, predominantly founded on the basis of helping the automotive industry to recognise that as a masculine, male-dominated environment, that culture and working practices have, over the years, contributed to mental health issues. And to get managers and leaders to take it seriously and recognise that everyone has mental health, just as we have physical health. The origins of it were based on my own issues, which I'm sure we'll come back and talk about a little bit later. And I reached out to the industry knowing full well I wasn't the only guy of a certain age that had issues, but I was probably the only one that was really open to talking about it. And I was blown away with the support that I got. And so now we've got some good employers working with us. We've got some good supporters in the form of individuals, but we've still got a long way to go. We've got about 1 million people in that sector alone. And yeah, and probably as Charlie alluded to, you know, men typically don't open up about mental health and well-being. We've not been encouraged. Certainly my generation and previous generations weren't encouraged to talk about mental health, about feelings, about emotions. And as a result, it's been stuff that we've swept under the carpet, and that's fine while everything's going well. But when we hit a period of time where it's getting near crisis, or there's issues in the world and we don't know how to cope, or there's a change in circumstances in our lives, we need to know that we, one, have got people we can reach out to, and two, that we're in a psychologically safe environment work-wise to be able to open up and talk about it and be vulnerable. So yeah, that's what we're all about.
Thanks, Steve. And Finian, would you like to go next?
Yeah, well, my name is Finian Murray. I work in men's health here in the Republic of Ireland. I've been involved in men's health since 2002, and I've been very much part of the men's health journey. In 2001, the government's health strategy mentioned men as a population group for the first time, and they commissioned some research in 2002, which ended up as a report in Getting Inside Men's Health is in 2004. And the main recommendation of that was that we would develop a national men's health policy. So that took place between January 2005 and December 2008. It was launched in January 2009. It was reviewed in 2015. And we have a new Healthy Ireland Men Action Plan now taking us forward into the future. So I've been involved in all that process at a national level and also at a local level. Done a lot of men's health training. We have an Engage program here where we train frontline staff to better connect with men around health and well-being. And I've also been involved with the Men's Health Forum in Ireland, which is an all-Ireland group with colleague Fowler. Some of you might know him. And every year we roll out Men's Health Week on the island of Ireland. That's one of our flagship events every year. So that's just a kind of a quick synopsis of me. And obviously mental health is men's mental health, very much part of the men's health journey here in the Republic of Ireland. So I'll be talking a bit more about that in a while. Thank you.
Thank you. And Martin?
Hi guys, I'm Martin. I'm a member of staff here at Men Matter Scotland. We are a suicide prevention and mental health charity in Drumchapel in Glasgow. This charity was formed in 2019 as a sort of pilot event it was called Dads Matter, and it was dads in Drumchapel who just felt they were just dads. They had nothing else going on. They'd nowhere to go, nobody to talk to. So that pilot scheme was successful, and they decided, you know what, it's not just dads, it's men that need this. So they formed Men Matter. It was a sort of talking group to start. And then in February 2020, we got charity status and we opened a hub here in Drumchapel. It's I think it's 15-room hub. It's pretty huge. And what we do here is sort of peer-to-peer support for guys. Guys come in, every staff member, volunteer and member of the place has walked through the doors because they needed help. They needed help with their mental health and we were able to offer them. So some of the volunteers and staff members then went on and said, I want to give back. So that is what we're doing here. We offer peer-to-peer support for guys. We're open from 10:30 till 9 o'clock, Monday to Friday. We have at least 3 activities a day, all promoting positive mental health, whether it be neuro-linguistic programming, mindset coaching, mental health matters group, talking groups, Wim Hof training, exercise, like we took the guys boxing this morning, we go walking groups, we've got paddle boards and all that sort of thing. So we are here to help people and show that there is a way out of it, because every single person that works here or comes here has got themselves out of it. It's all peer-to-peer driven. We give our staff and volunteers peer-to-peer training, assist suicide prevention training, and we have on board people that come in and deliver classes and deliver services that we can, that will help improve the guys. We also have counsellors and CBT therapists on board that come in as well. So if we can't help you out, we'll try and find somebody that will.
That's amazing. I absolutely love the fact that everyone who works there has come through the doors, proving the concept that it works, and it shows that kind of faith for people who do come through the door, that there is another side to it, and that's brilliant. So thank you. Bob, tell us a bit more about yourself.
Well, you know me quite well, Charlie, because I help you run OK Positive as the Chief Operating Officer. I come to this from a background of I grew up in childcare as a kid, and I was in the military and I was in banking, and various events throughout those times. It led me to have some PTSD, which I've been able to deal with. But the passion to help as many people as possible is what drives me, and OK Positive have enabled us to be able to have those discussions, not only with individuals but with companies who can then reach out to a wider employee base. So it's something that's really what drives me and what drives the rest of the team at OK Positive as well. So I'm glad to be part of this meeting, and it, from everything that I'm hearing from the other gentlemen on this, it's cause it really is, it's time where we're getting a lot of men involved in that, because you see, all the time, if you're on Facebook with your friends and that, you hear about one of your male friends having committed suicide, or somebody knows somebody that's it's happened to, and it just happens far too much. And I was seeing it on a regular basis, especially for some ex-military guys that have experienced things like Iraq and all that. They didn't know where to reach out, and having those facilities, such as yours, is what really makes a difference. Absolutely, because as soon as they talk to somebody, that's where it stops, and they can actually start on a better path. So I'm glad to be on this call.
Amazing, thanks. Well, I suppose it is inspiring to see a load of men talking about mental health so openly. I know we're here from organisations, but there will be elements of peer-to-peer conversations here, because it is important to raise that awareness and be able to speak and encourage others that it's okay to. And if you do it yourself, I found that by talking about my mental health, it's helped others to open, and they've helped others to open, and it's that kind of trickle-down effect that we need to look at. So thank you, everyone. In terms of the next kind of step of this, I'm going to tell you a bit more about my experience. Proof is in the pudding, practice what you preach, and talk about how my mental health has evolved over the last 5 years, and then lead into questions which I want everyone to kind of discuss and debate and share ideas and even their own experiences within that, if possible. So I struggled with my mental health. It was around 5 years ago. I worked in a recruitment business for my sins. I actually loved the work, but I've always maintained a level of OCD and intrusive thoughts, which kind of coupled with anxiety. For those who don't know what that's like, I'll give an example. It's when your brain's at its happiest and you're sitting around a table with your loved ones, you sit there and imagine, what if everyone died at that instant moment? And then your brain with the OCD starts obsessing over the fact that that's going to happen, that's going to happen. And eventually, as your brain's a very powerful thing, you start to believe yourself. And that would regularly happen more and more as I was working in this recruitment business. I started thinking about different things. Intrusive thoughts popped up, made me feel pretty horrible most of the day. And I used to have 3 or 4 panic attacks a day. And it was there I kind of realized I needed to help myself. I looked up everything. I looked up mindfulness apps. I looked up breathing exercises. I looked up therapy options. I studied different research methods and psychological models to try and help myself. And it was there I kind of realized that mental health and physical health are very similar. I was big around physical health. I'm a rugby player. I was a rugby player before my concussions. And I realized that physical health very much aligned with that. I was big on exercise. And I realized, why do we focus so much on getting better and training and exercising and working on our bodies, and we completely negate our heads? And what we start thinking is, you know, oh, I'll just wait and wait and wait, bury it down until a point where it comes out and there's a crisis point. And that's what happened for me. I took things home with me, gained a load of weight, became depressed, and it was actually my partner who snapped me out of it. She turned around one day and said, "You're miserable. I hate to see you like this. You need to leave your job." And so I did, and I actually started the business that we've got today at OK Positive through that. And really, the takeaway for me over the last 5 years is I've actually started to see more and more people talking about their mental health, particularly men. Obviously, coming from that rugby background, coming from a golf background, I found that a lot of men wouldn't talk about themselves and wouldn't, even if you asked them twice, how are you doing, you wouldn't get any information out of them. It was only from me talking to them about myself and becoming comfortable to do that people then shared with me. We created a friends golf group that is now 20 people strong. And on the first tee, we always talk about our mental health. We always talk about how our week's been, how has our, you know, what have your anxieties been, what have your stresses been this week. And by just talking, it's actually eased that concern for me that I'm alone, that other people feel that way. And like physical health, for me, what helped me was learning about my triggers, my what caused me, what was my root cause, was it work? And at that particular time it was. So I changed something about that. And I learned that breathing exercises and exercise itself, physical activity, helped my mental health. And through that process over the last 5 years, I'm now at a point where I haven't had a panic attack since. And it's because I understand my triggers, I understand my symptoms, and I know what works for me to help myself. And if I can do that, anyone can, because I'm by no means special. And if we can share that message, then that's what's powerful. And on that topic of the last 5 years, I've noticed that, you know, the BACP just brought out a percentage that 79% of men agree it's more socially acceptable to discuss mental health than 5 years ago, which I think is a wonderful stat, something very positive to start on. So my question would be, I think we'll start with Steve, if that's all right. How much progress have you seen with regards to men's mental health in the last 5 years? And what do you think are the kind of notable themes or trends or after effects from the pandemic?
I think there's been huge progress, but then that's coming from my position of that this is all I ever think about. You know, I'm not in the normal workplace. I'm not in a car dealership or an automotive business, the ones that we're working with. What I'm seeing now is employers reaching out to us to say, we want to get involved in this. So there's clearly a change there. But what we've still got is at the grassroots in our industry is, you know, if you imagine in a car dealership, you've got everyone from the fairly low paid guys who clean the cars through to the mechanics and the people who work in parts, salespeople, management, people who are more senior to that, you know, the people that are at the level I was sort of regional director level, and you know, everyone in between. And what I'm seeing is the employers are kind of going, yeah, we need to do something about this. And to some extent, some are ticking the box. Many are, you know, putting people on mental health first aider courses, which I've got my own views and opinions on that. I think that course is great and it serves a purpose, but not in a car dealership. And the reason I say that is because to tick the box, they'll send Jessica, who's the 19-year-old receptionist, and she'll go off and come back and become a mental health first aider. And unfortunately, Barry, the 55-year-old parts manager who's just split up with his wife and has a crisis, is very, very unlikely to take the shoulder of the 19-year-old receptionist, whether she's male or female. So I think we still have a long way to go in terms of getting that message across. And so for us, we just simply use a kind of shoulder to shoulder type of approach and encourage everyone to talk.
And I think, yeah, just to introduce Emily Pearson here from Our Minds Work, I think you'll definitely coming into that around mental health first aid and that exact situation from Steve. Please feel free to introduce yourself, but also, yeah, if you want to come back on that as well.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little bit late. One of my clients was stuck on the motorway and I had to wait for them to get safe before we could get a call in. So sorry about that. Thanks for your patience. My name's Emily Pearson. I'm the founder and managing director at Our Minds Work. My particular interest in men's health is because we launched back in March the first to market product in workplace wellbeing, which is for men by men. Called the Ambassador Program. So we're pretty kind of excited about that, and completely exactly what you're saying, Steve. Not a fan of mental health first aid. Anyone who knows me knows that I talk about that quite often, but probably not for the reasons that you mentioned there. For me, it can be quite unsafe for a company and colleagues and employees. 2-day training does not turn people into mental health experts or specialists, and it can actually create more risks in a business where you have a duty of care to protect the health and safety and welfare of people. So yeah, I'm also not a great fan there, but I love what you're saying so far about that shoulder to shoulder approach. You know, this is what the research shows us about what men want from initiatives, and it's not that they don't want their wellbeing initiatives. They've definitely been overlooked. But the research is telling us that they don't want to be sat face to face directly in front of people being told you just need to talk about your mental health. It's a completely different approach that guys need, and that's exactly why we designed the Ambassador Program. So thanks. I'm looking forward to our chats today. Has anyone got a beer there yet? It's after 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. No,
I promise you that this isn't gin. Okay? It's just water.
It's coffee, I promise.
Yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, so Martin, on that side of things, particularly on the peer-to-peer shoulder side of things, what are you seeing within that area that's making a difference? What are these conversations? Can you shed a bit of light on that?
Yeah, no problem. We've sort of noticed that it has got much better in the last 5 years, but not at the rate of suicides and people suffering from depression. So while we have made massive strides, we're still a long way behind. And we found with the peer-to-peer thing is, as long as you can see somebody who you think's been in a similar situation to you or can empathise with you, you'll open up. We're in a sort of deprived area in Glasgow, and guys coming through that area, it's just inbuilt that they don't speak. But then if they see one of their mates or somebody they know coming here, they'll go, oh, hold on a minute, if they're doing it, it must be okay. And our whole peer-to-peer thing is every single person that works here or is a member here has walked through that door because they've needed help with something. So every single person that comes in here knows the people in here have been through similar situations to them and maybe have got better or are still going through it. And we have sort of values in this hub that we ask our members to abide by, and it's like open-mindedness, respect, honesty, confidentiality, non-judgment and all that, because everybody that comes through is struggling with something, and we find if people know that guys are in similar situations to them, they're more likely to open up rather than sitting in front of a doctor or somebody and saying, look, I'm struggling. Because we are finding a lot is guys will come in and say, doctors gave me a prescription for whatever antidepressant and then told me to get on my way. Doctors have got a very difficult job now. They cannot see everybody, they cannot help everybody. But these guys are just left to take these tablets, see how you get on in a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks is too long. They need help now. So this peer-to-peer, we can bring guys in and say, have a chat with us. All our staff are trained in that, or go and speak to our members, and we'll sit guys out there and we'll come back in half an hour and they'll be sitting chatting, laughing or sharing similar experiences. People going through similar things can tell you how they either got through it or tell you how they're getting through it, and this can be shared. And if you speak to somebody as well and say, how did you do it? There's light at the end of the tunnel, therefore you can see how they done it. But as well, if you speak to some people, you might find, oh, they're in a worse off position than me. I'm grateful for all I've got. So all these things in the peer-to-peer all of that adds in. And I just feel that if guys can see people in similar situations to them, whether they're in it right now or they've been through it, they're more likely to open up than sitting in front of a desk with somebody.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that, because on that topic, the NHS released that, like in terms of, I suppose, thoughts of suicide, 40% of men said that it would take thoughts of suicide or self-harm for them to seek help. And if you're being sent away for 2 weeks and not being seen, or you're just given medication, that there's a missing part of that, isn't there? There's that open conversation, being able to have those conversations to other people who are going through similar experiences, sharing, which is something that it's hard enough to get men to do in the first place, right? And if they're being almost turned away in that sense of, okay, well, this is what you need and off you go, it doesn't solve that root cause problem. So it's really interesting. I don't know if, Finian, from your experience over the last 5 years, have you seen any change from a Republic of Ireland perspective, and any insights that you've seen?
Yeah, we've seen some new role models emerge, you know, like even today I was on a webinar with Brent Pope. I don't know if you've ever come across him, but he was a famous New Zealand rugby player, and he went into management, but he would have been seen as quite, you know, the macho man. But he's opened up around, you know, anxiety. Growing up, he had anxiety issues and depression issues and so on. And when men see someone like him, you know, opening up around mental health, you know, it gives them permission then to open up, you know, about their own difficulties. And so that's what we found. We found these testimonials from kind of high profile men who open up around these issues has been a great help to us here. And the discourse has moved on a lot now, where it's not as taboo anymore for men to talk about mental health, even on the media, you know, on our local television channels and so on. Men often come on and talk about the difficulties they're going through. There's a famous singer, Bazley is his name, and he's quite vocal about his mental health difficulties as well. And you know, that has given men permission to open up and to seek help around mental health difficulties. So from that point of view, you know, the discourse has moved on a lot here in the Republic of Ireland. I'm not sure has it moved on similarly in the UK, but definitely has moved on a lot here now. So it's good to see that happening.
Yeah, and I suppose that leads really well into kind of the next point around kind of masculine stereotypes. So the BACP released a study in June, I think it was 2022, that cited that those stereotypes were one of the most significant obstacles for men seeking mental health support. And I suppose that lends into that kind of conversation of role models, right? So, okay, it's okay if I see the big rugby player talking about mental health, but how does that need to change, I suppose? And I think, what role do you think those stereotypes play in stigmatization of men's mental health? And how would we, I suppose, Steve, that's a great place for you to come in around, how do we change that masculine stereotype around men don't talk?
Well, I mean, you know a bit of my story. I mean, the thing for me is acceptance, and you know, challenging those typical stereotypes. So, you know, if you've seen a few posts from me in the last couple of weeks, you'll know that, you know, I'll turn up to an event flamboyantly dressed, with my nails painted, you know, and we'll challenge those sort of things and say, well, why is that frowned upon? Why is that not acceptable for a guy to do things like that? You know, I'm open about my sexuality, but that has no bearing on it at all. The point about things are that what I see in particularly in the industry that I've grown up in is that it's too much masculine energy. So, you know, as an example, you know, to explain that a little bit more, masculine energy is about competition, aggression, targets, performance. You know, it's hunter-gatherer, farmer type of mentality. Feminine energy is about nurture and caring and collaboration and creativity. And what we need to encourage men to do is to just recognize that for centuries we've over-promoted the dysfunctional masculine and suppressed the natural feminine that we all have. And so, you know, if it takes a 55-year-old bisexual granddad to come out and say, come on, guys, we can all talk about this. You know, just because you're there with a drill in your hand fixing the fence in the daytime, it doesn't mean you can't put a pinny on and go and cook a quiche in the evening. You know, because those are the type of typical stereotypical thoughts and attitudes that we have, and particularly in male-dominated industries. And what I found in doing that, in the talks that I do and the workshops that I run, is actually the reality is, and this is how things have moved on, actually the only person who was ever really bothered about that was me. Most people don't give a stuff. Most people, senior people in the industry, have said to me, oh yeah, we could have guessed that, but actually it's no big deal. We just accept you for who you are. And I'm like, well, what the bloody hell was I worried about for the last 35 years then?
Yeah, and that's interesting because there was a study by the Priory Group who asked men who identified as not wanting to talk about their mental health, like what were the barriers of them talking about their mental health? And it's like they don't want to be a burden to anyone. You know, I'm too embarrassed. There's this negative stigma about me talking about it, or I don't want to admit I need support. I don't want to appear weak, because I always say that vulnerability is strength. But we've always positioned vulnerability as weakness as men, because, you know, if you're vulnerable in a team sport or at school, you're often picked on because it's like, well, you know, you're not following that mentality that men have, that, you know, we'll just tough and get on with it, stiff upper lip. I don't know, Bob, if you've ever experienced anything around.
Yeah, well, you know, if I recall my time in the military, and, you know, I mean, that's a very I mean, you can't get any more, you know, masculine than the guys. Even though, you know, there's a lot of women in the military now, and it's a lot more different than when I was in. Although I did a stint in the reserve about 5-6 years ago, and the change in the military since I was in the 80s. I'm showing my age now, but the change is just dramatic. It's, you know, I mean, you know, a lot of military guys, when you see them on Facebook and they talk about it, you know, if anybody now says, oh, I'm feeling down or depressed, there's like, you know, they're just bombarded with everybody saying, come and talk to me, where are you? You know, that guys are just gonna, you know, go and help them. And I think we've always had this sort of dogma of, you feel that you're letting the team down, you know, and especially in a military situation where, you know, you just never want to do that. You know, you don't want to be the weak link. And so having that, getting past that barrier and understanding that actually, you know what, it's okay to talk about if you've got mental health issues, if you're feeling vulnerable, if you want to discuss it. And I'm seeing that more and more now, you know, especially in the last 5 years, where it's just got better and better, and there's lots of, you know, groups that are helping with the signposting, and, you know, here, look, you know, you can get help here, you can get help here, and I think it's great, you know, and it's great that you know, men are starting to open up to that, and it's the same for myself. You know, my father passed away in 2013, and I really struggled with it, and it brought up a lot of the trauma and everything that I'd suffered when I was in childcare as a residential childcare as a kid, but also just, you know, items that happened when I was in the army, etc. And you know, I really struggled, and everybody at that point was, you know, just go, oh, man up, Bob, you know, you should get on with it. And you know, you want to, but you can't, you know. And you know, when I'd not been sleeping for about 2 weeks solid, I thought, this is not healthy for me. So then, as Martin had mentioned, you know, you go to a doctor, the doctor says, yeah, I can get you to see, you know, a counsellor / therapist. They can't see you for like 6 months. 6 months is too late. You know, we you know, there's absolutely, you know, we have lost people through suicide because of that, because they've just not been able to get the help that they could have so easily got. And that help is just somebody else to listen to, you know, to be that shoulder. You know, and then, you know, a lot of people, you know, they're put onto the drugs, and, you know, and I took some antidepressant drugs because I was just really finding it difficult to cope, and to, you know, just maintain a daily day-to-day operation of myself. And, you know, the antidepressant just made me feel even more depressed. You know, it just didn't help for me personally. It might help others, but, you know, when I started to talk to somebody, I just went privately and started to talk to somebody, and it helps so much. It's just, you know, just to be able to take it off yourself and to, you know, share that experience with somebody else was all I needed, you know. And you know, since, you know, I've been good and been getting along, and you know, being involved in the OK Positive team has helped me tremendously. And, you know, it boils down to just having somebody to talk to, and to be able to know where to go for that, you know, is at the end of the day, is what men, I think, really need.
Can I just jump in? Sorry, on
Yep.
a very quick point. Bob was talking there about the military. I've only got this photograph on my phone, so I hope you'll be able to see it. Can you see that? What that is?
Yeah.
Well, the shorter one on the right, I guess, as you look at it, that's Ed. He's a captain in the signals, and the taller one is Vinny. He's a regimental sergeant major in the signals, and they got married in August in the officers' mess.
Amazing.
Well, you know what? The fact that I was ex-Royal Signals.
Oh, really? Oh, right.
Yeah. So I was Signals. So, and it's funny because when I went into the reserve, obviously I can't name names, but when I went into the reserve, so I left the army. I joined at age 16, and I was in the army for 6 and a bit years, and I left in 1989, and I joined the reserve in 2016, and I did it for a few years. And when I joined up in Edinburgh, there was somebody that was transgender. Now, and I wasn't sure to begin with, because on one day they were very male, and then the next day I'm thinking, why have they got their hair in a net? And I just didn't I didn't put it together. And it was only when somebody mentioned it to me, I went, okay, well that's great, because it didn't make any difference. Everybody's I think nowadays people don't really care what your choice is. You can do what you want. It's your life. But in the past it was very much played down, hidden, and nobody wanted to talk about it, especially in the military. You just I can't remember what the rulings were back in the 80s, but I think it's more accepted now. And well, rightly so, if they're getting married in the office mess, that's a that's a new one for me as well. And good that it's the Royal Corps of Signals. I'm very proud of that. So
that's the thing, right? All of these things, all these external elements package into a man's mental health, right? So if you are stressed about coming out, if you're stressed about transgender, if you're stressed about how people perceive you, whether that institution will accept you or not, that sort of thing, does it affect your job security? Those things will be going through a man's head, and he won't be able to talk to someone about it, or it will move back to those points of, I'm too embarrassed, I have no one to talk to about it, I don't want to, what if they react poorly to what I say? And that's quite dangerous as well, from a perspective of, you go and share and open up to someone and they react in a completely negative way. And I love to see that the army are going in that direction and making everything more inclusive, making it that you can bring your own self to work. I think we're all on side about that everywhere, across all industries. I suppose, Emily, my question around that, just further to it, is the construction industry, right? We've still got the highest levels of suicide in that industry. Why and how does, I suppose, how do we change that perspective? Why is that first? And how do we change that? How do we move at the rate that, the Royal Signals are there? How do we change perceptions so that people can bring their whole selves to work? Or is that, in fact, the issue that they're struggling with?
I think when it comes to the construction industry, it's very, very complex. Mental health is very complex. And I suppose when we're talking about mental health's a symptom. Mental ill health is a symptom of other things that are going on. So it's the complexities of underneath that. It's like, why does somebody have poor mental health in the first place? And to open up about your mental health may potentially mean that you've then got to open up about past trauma, being sexually assaulted as a man, things that will be the cause of poor mental health, drug and alcohol abuse, addictions. Like, these are all complex within themselves, aren't there? And then once you start to put them into an environment like the construction industry, where 2 million of those workers in the industry in the UK are men, low skilled, blue collar, majority of the workforce, low socioeconomic status, probably living in work and poverty if you followed them back to the places where they were living, high levels of drug and alcohol abuse, bullying culture there, and then the demands and the pressure of the job, working away from loved ones, the lad culture that comes along with that. But this starts to get really, 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 really complex. So to start trying to pick all of that apart, it becomes quite difficult to do. And I think that's maybe the reason why we haven't seen improvements in male suicide rates, is because actually we're not hitting it with a big enough hammer for the problems that actually exist because of it, because it is so much more complex than men have poor mental health and I haven't thought to suicide. There is so much going on underneath that gets people there in the first place. Their values, their beliefs, their levels of education around mental health, their cultures. You know, if we're talking about changing cultures in a workplace, what if their cultures and their social norms in their society are so like entrenched that it doesn't matter what you're doing in a workplace, it's never going to change the societal problems that we have. And I really do feel, and I really struggle with this, because it isn't taken seriously enough, not in our government. So we've got a women's health policy, but we don't have a men's health policy. You know, women do attempt suicide more often than men, but when men do it, their means are much more fatal and much quicker. So there's no time for intervention. So all of these initiatives of just talk about your mental health, guys, just reach out when you're struggling, it's too late. Men need to be engaged much earlier, before they actually reach crisis, in a way that is, and you know, we talked about it in the last podcast, Charlie, about it being about building organic trust and relationships, doing shoulder to shoulder activities that gives them purpose, so that those relationships are built, so that if they do get to the point where they are struggling, they're able to share it in a relationship scenario. Because what we found through some of our research that we've been doing recently around men's health is men's health poor, and we know that. So even suicide's the 5th biggest killer of men. Suicide's not even the biggest killer of men. There's another 4 biggest killers out there that kill men on a much higher rate than women do. Once you get into the old people's homes, it's full of women, because our men are dead. We've lost them, you know. So when it comes to understanding what's going on inside of men genetically as well, they're physically may be stronger, but genetically they're the weaker sex. We have 2 of the same chromosome, so if one of them is fucked up, we've got a backup. Guys don't have that, so they have a much generally poorer physical health as well. And we know that mental health and physical health are all connected. So it's really complex. And some of the research that we found with asking men some really important questions, they've got poor mental health and physical health. When they do struggle, they prefer to speak to somebody who they know well. So it's generally their partner, their friends, their family, before they'll even speak to a professional, someone at work, an EAP. So when we're trying to engage guys, we've got to really think about this in a little bit more depth than just put mental health first aiders in place. And the construction industry have invested probably hundreds and hundreds of £1,000s on mental health first aid. And what has it done? Nothing. Those suicide rates have literally just increased over the past 4 years, and nearly doubled in the industry for blue collar workers and low skilled workers. You know, it's just, we're not responding to it in the right way. And I feel like there's just this complete lack of complacency, where anybody who wants to dig any deeper or really scratch the surface of what's going on and hit it with something big. So yeah, that's my bit really. I find it really shocking. I'm a huge man fan. I always have been. Was always a bit of a tomboy. So definitely embraced my masculine energies, Steve. Love much closer to my dad. All my male best friends, you know, I have had them throughout my lifetime. But one of my friends said to me, and I love this and I use it often, we love the men in our lives and the life in our men. And I would be absolutely devastated if I didn't have those men in my life. So what the fuck are we going to do about it? Sorry, you're recording this. You're going to have to edit me out.
No, we won't. No, we won't.
What are we doing?
No, it's good to
Emily, when
mental health first aid, like
Emily,
Yeah,
when you say you're a massive man fan, I'm with you on that.
I'd just like to comment on some of the points that you raised there, Emily. Is so first of all, you know, the mental health, person at the office that's been, sent on a 2-day, a 1-day course. I mean, it very much, appears probably to most people that it's just a tick box. The company thinks, oh, we've got a mental health person. They're going to, you can go and talk to them, and you think, I don't want to talk to that person. That it's my boss, or it's the person that's just came in 10 minutes ago, and they're the only one that's willing to do it. It's absolutely, while it in principle, if you look at it on paper and think, oh, that's a good idea, but actually, in reality, it does, it obviously doesn't work. I mean, you're saying it, Steve's saying it, and my own sort of gut feeling for that is, yeah, that might be helpful, but it might almost be more helpful if you actually get a proper counsellor, therapist in and do a session with an entire team, rather than just having one person that's, may never be used or even asked to talk to by anybody in that company, and yet they think that they're okay because they've ticked the box there.
And they're usually women, Bob. They're usually women as well. Who wants to be a mental health first aider? All the women are going, me please, because that's what we're good at. We're good at talking to people when they're struggling and supporting them. But and men, we know that when men are around women, what do they want to do? They want to be seen as masculine. They want to be seen as the alpha male. They don't want to be seen as weak, especially in front of a woman. So we see that in counselling. The majority of counsellors are women counsellors. And we know that less than 10% of men actually go into counselling. The services are not really set up for them.
And so I suppose on that, like in terms of it, is mental health, or men's mental health, a societal issue, a public health issue, or is it a combination of both? Finian, I don't know if you have an input around that, of whether this is something that everyone from all sides should be looking at, not just encouraging men to talk. Should we be looking at the root cause and the motivations of men? So, we talk about it from an OK Positive perspective of why on earth would we show mindfulness and yoga videos to men if they're worried about financial well-being? Why should we show a breathing exercise if they're stressed about relationships in their family? We should be focusing on the areas that they're struggling with and being able to support to those things, rather than giving a blanket. So do you think it's a societal thing, or is it a public health responsibility, or do we all need to muck in at this stage?
Yeah, I like Steve's thing about that masculine energy. I remember some of the theories we work from would be, R.W. Connell's theories around masculinities, and what Steve describes as masculine energy, he calls hegemonic masculinity, which is the dominant form of masculinity, and it only values, competition and aggression and being strong and being a breadwinner and things like that, and it doesn't allow for the vulnerable side, and then I was at a webinar this morning, would you believe, by there's a speaker called Gary Barker. I don't know if you come across him, but he works for Equimundo, and he was talking about that whole concept of the man box, which is the really construction of cultural ideas about male identity. So in other words, it's a set of norms or implicit rules and expectations for socially expected and or approved male behavior. And a lot of young lads in particular buy into this man box. So the stronger a young man's stated belief in these norms, the more likely he is to show several negative behavioral health outcomes, So that's one of the points that we're making so I think just to go back to your question, we need to go back to the source and maybe looking a bit more at this man box, and that could be some of the source of men socializing themselves into this type of masculinity, into this kind of gender stereotype. And if we could get back to the source of that, and even go back to schools and kind of make people aware of what's happening, we could kind of almost like deprogram ourselves. And even in playgrounds at the moment, even as we speak, if a young guy falls, he's told to man up and be a tough little soldier and stop crying and so on. But then when he needs help later in life, he doesn't know how to look for it then, because he's been told he can't get help, he can't ask for help. So we need to get back to the source maybe of some of this, and I think that would help a lot going forward into the future, you know, and in terms of would help to reduce suicides as well further down the line, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I suppose, because suicide is the biggest male killer under 45, right? So that's 70% of all suicides are men as well. So this is a problem that isn't going away, right? And maybe we do need to look at education from a younger age. And I think there is a focus on that, particularly from a UK perspective, of looking at what are these behaviors, what are we encouraging. It even starts at birth, right, with a blue and a pink wall for when you have a baby. It's ingrained into subconscious, and how do we change that psyche around it? So it's a really interesting point about that, I suppose.
Yeah, and there was also an interesting thing. Somebody was talking about the construction industry, and one of the points that Gary Bark was making was that the construction industry, the men in the construction industry would buy into that man box a lot more than maybe the rest of us, you know. So that's kind of one industry, and we're aware of that because we have high suicide rates in the construction industry here in Ireland as well. And we have set up a project called the Corja Project, where we are doing some research around along with the construction workers, and one way we're getting them to buy into the research and give us their opinions about their mental health and so on, is we're giving them vouchers for a filling station so they can go and fill up their car on the way home from the research and so on. And that's worked. We've got a huge response. We've got more of a response than we actually realize we would get, you know. Like, we have 1,134 men have already completed the questionnaire as part of the research, and 800 more questionnaires are still out there waiting to come back. But the companies are expressing an interest in being involved, and the companies are interested because they're very concerned about their workers dying by suicide. So they want any kind of initiative that would help stop that, you know. So they're really on board. So that's just one initiative, just to let you know, that's happening over here, that just keep an eye out for, because there will be an evaluation available quite soon, and you know, hopefully other countries and other jurisdictions can learn from that.
Yeah, and I suppose that it's interesting you talk about the filling station to fill up their car, because the kind of the Priory group raised some research around the biggest cause of mental health issues for men. So the top was work pressure, the second was financial issues, and the third was their health. So there's nothing there really talking about their mental health, but those topics were the main reasons and root causes for it. So it's interesting that the men were like, yeah, okay, we'll talk about our mental health if we're incentivized by the financial well-being aspect. But I suppose to add on to that, how do we encourage men to open up and reach out for that support based on how they're feeling? And how do we, instead of saying it's okay to not be okay and you know, ask people how they are twice, how do we actually get men to do it rather than say that they should do it? I suppose, Martin, I don't know if you have any insight into that from what you're doing. Obviously, people are coming through your doors. Is it that raising awareness, or is there something else? Are there initiatives that you're doing that maybe we could take away from this?
I think it's all a mixture. Like what all you guys have been saying is true. I think what we found is that it's sort of inbred that guys don't have the same emotional needs as women, and it's about figuring that out. What Finian said there about when a guy falls over and gets picked up, it's come on, man up. But when a girl falls over, it's, oh, you okay, darling, and all that sort of thing. And if that's what's getting inbred from you from a very young age, that's where it's building up from. So from a personal point of view, this is just going to keep happening if we don't get in there from the very start, which is going into schools. We have physical education. Why do we not have mental health education straight away at schools? And then we have that sort of thing, because what I was just thinking there when Steve said about coming out in the LGBTQ plus and even things like racism, while there's so much further for these things to go, they started so much longer ago than mental health. The chat about all these things started, and while they have made good progress, and when I was younger there was maybe one or two gay men on TV, now it's the norm of people be gay if they come out, and that's brilliant. So we need to make it the norm that people talk if they're struggling. So it's about how do we do that? What we can do right now is have places like our place, in my opinion, have all you guys there telling them you can come here if you're struggling, but we need to go back right to the start and put these things in place so it's the norm for people to start talking, not just guys, girls as well. It has to be the norm, and we have to figure out how to do that. But unfortunately, in my opinion, that's not going to happen, because what we're seeing is more and more money being taken out of mental health and put into other things. And I can't believe it. I'm like, start with mental health and everything else will get better, but they're doing it the other way around, in my opinion. So it's going to be difficult in that way, because we're not getting, there's no funding, things aren't doing it. In the past week, I've been to 3 construction companies, different ones, giving talks on our place. And it's like, well, that's good. People in construction don't have to do that, but they're choosing to do that. So while these things are happening, it's still not enough for me. It's still not enough. The government, everywhere else, it should be compulsory that you have a mental health course, or somebody from that's trained from the government or something goes into workplaces and delivers this stuff. Because going on your 2-day emergency mental health course, yes, it might save the odd person, but as you have spoke about, it doesn't really work because it's not there. Get somebody in telling these people that there's like-minded people like them, everybody struggles, and then they'll see that. I think with other things, I think it was Steve was saying as well, like the more celebrities or people that are worldwide that come out with these things, the better. But I still think the mental health thing is miles and miles behind all the other things that have went on in the past 40, 50 years that we've got better at. So we need to look at it and say, right, we're trying right now to get in when things are bad. How do we get in before things get bad? I think that's the key. It's not going to make things great right now, but long term, it will make things better. And short term, we just need to keep raising awareness. Even though it gets tiring, you feel like you're banging the same drum, we just need to keep doing it, because one person walking through our doors is one more person that's found out there's help out there for them. So I know it can get tiring, but we just need to keep at it.
No, and I really appreciate that. And I think from what you're talking there about preventative measures is really what we focus on at OK Positive. It's looking after yourself and maintaining your mental health while you're feeling good, and understanding what causes you to make you feel worse off, or how does your mood change, and learn about yourself, become more self-aware. One of the ways that I found personally opening up conversations about mental health is to put it in the language of someone that's not maybe focus on the words mental health or struggles or suicide, all these kind of things. I very much talk about mental health as my day. So it's like me, what was my day like? So when I talk to someone about my mental health, they say, oh, I've had a rubbish day. I've been really stressed because of my work deadlines. I've not got this pitch in on time. And, I'm getting shouted at. And that's me talking about my mental health, right? But I'm not openly saying, oh, I'm having real struggles and I need to be vulnerable. Maybe potentially, and I don't know what people's thoughts are on this, we need to change the language around it to just be focusing about how you're feeling. Like, because everyone has feelings, everyone has how their day has been, everyone experiences things in their day. So if we can make it more approachable to talk about, then perhaps we'll get more people to open up about that, because they don't feel like they have to be too vulnerable at the first instance to people maybe they don't know as well. And because we're all very open with our loved ones, our partners, or most of us are, but that's still a problem as well when people shut up and don't mention things. But I think if we can make it a way that works in terms of those kind of conversations, make it more approachable, is that a potential option?
Sorry, Jay, on actually one of our training courses, we have changed the language from mental health to mental fitness, and men get the physical fitness piece. So when we speak in that terms, in terms of mental fitness, they kind of get that, So and that can help. And then there's a training course we developed with farmers, because farmers over here are quite a high risk group as well. And we come up with this acronym called EARS. The expression, you're all ears. And it was the first thing is to engage with the man in distress, or the farmer in distress, as the case may be. Like, how are you? Acknowledge is for acknowledge, listen, be compassionate, empathize, don't judge. Then reassure, tell them it's normal to feel this way. And then signpost, to the GP or other mental health services. So that's a little acronym we came up with as part of our training course, and it seems to work very well if you come across a man in psychological distress.
So I suppose this links in, on that. So I suppose everyone here, I'd love to hear the input around like, what would your one key takeaway be to people listening to this, or businesses listening to this, or people trying to reach out to a male person around how they're feeling? What would you suggest? I suppose you want to start, Emily, and then we'll go round.
Yeah.
I think it's a great acronym, and I love the idea of that, because it is, how do we get people to listen effectively? Because it's great people telling you how they feel, but if you don't know how to respond to it, it can be quite dangerous in that way. So Emily, I don't know if you've got any takeaways around that.
I think probably my biggest one about, everything that we've talked about, is great, isn't it? As long as you've got men engaging in that. And I think one of the biggest problems that a lot of initiatives already have is that they're not engaging men because of the language they use, the colours. And I know you don't like the pink and blue scenario, but this is what engages men. And they know this in marketing. It's how you market it to somebody to get them instantly connected with what you're trying to sell them. The Diet Coke adverts don't have a hunky man with his top off mowing the lawn with a load of women sat drinking the Diet Cokes for any other reason than that drink is marketed at women. Coke Zero in the black can with the red text, very, very simple. That's marketed at men. Same drink in there, completely different way of marketing it. So we've got to think about this when if we want to engage men. You might have the best idea in the world to help men with their mental health, but if it doesn't instantly interact them and engage them and relate to them so that they look at it and go, wow, that's me, I need to go and read that, then it's failed straight away. Women will pay attention to everything, because we're constantly thinking, my husband would love that for Christmas. It's my dad's birthday coming up. You guys don't think like that. Look around the supermarket. Yeah, what things you were going to go in there to buy. Have a look at the branding. Have a look at why you're buying those things for you as a man. So for me, it doesn't matter how good you are at helping men with their mental health, or you think you are. If you're not marketing it to them and they're not engaged in it, it's not going to work. So I think that's probably the biggest thing for me. Big challenge to get over as well.
I suppose, Steve, then further to that, what would your one takeaway be for people listening to this in terms of supporting men's mental health?
Well, the key one is to take this sort of shoulder to shoulder approach. Some of those best conversations are while you're in the car or while you're working alongside somebody. And we use a very simple, my key takeaway would be the very simple rev counter analogy that we use. So on the dashboard of your car, assuming you don't have an electric car, that is, if you've got a more traditional one, then you'll have two dials. And the second one is a rev counter that most people don't take any notice of. And when your engine is running smoothly and efficiently, that rev counter is normally at about 2,000 revs. But when you increase the pressure, those revs go up. And what we've all been talking about is that if you liken that to the mental health situation, a lot of people's mental health becomes a problem when that rev counter gets into the red zone. So what we talk about is that the preventative, proactive side of it is to recognize that you wouldn't sit on the driveway with your foot on the gas, revving the Watsits off your engine so that it's constantly hovering just below the red on the rev counter. So use that as an analogy, and the takeaway therefore is to say to people, or forget saying to them, how are you? Because that elicits the typical, oh, I'm fine, thanks, or same shit, different day, or whatever. But to actually say to them, how are you revving? And then when they come back and say 4 or 5, well, okay, talk to me about that.
I like that. I really like that approach. It's something we very much use at OK Positive in terms of record your mood, record how you're feeling out of 100. Like, we want to understand people and we want people to understand themselves. So it resonates a lot with me. I suppose, Finian, what would your takeaway be? I know you've had a load of different initiatives that you're doing within the organization, but if it was directed at individual men listening to this that are potentially feeling like, gosh, this is me, like I don't open up, I don't talk nearly enough, what would you recommend as a takeaway for them?
Well, I think that what we do here is we use a strengths-based approach, so that in other words, like men are to be valued, not a problem to be solved. I think that's the first thing. And I like Emily's thing about the marketing. What we found was that if like men see a lot of health promotion literature, for example, for women, right? But if we put man in the title, they will pick it up. It's a bit like Nivea for men. So it's it's a thing we've learned. And so for example, we use a thing called the man manual, and the men, just they can't get enough of them. But if we just called it a health promotion information booklet, no man would pick it up. So I think the marketing is actually very important, and it's also about connecting masculine ideals with being healthy. So in other words, to be a real man goes to the doctor. A real man is proactive about his health, and so on. So we just use kind of positive messaging, and also testimonials from kind of celebrities who actually encourage men to be more healthy and to live healthier lives.
Amazing. And then Martin, in terms of that, obviously you've got that kind of suicide prevention approach. What would your takeaway be for individuals who potentially are thinking, oh, that sounds like it's for me, or maybe I'm not sure, I don't want to walk through that door? What would your takeaway be?
It's always just take that first step. We a bit like you said earlier, one of the massive things that we say to people that you seem to see gives that light bulb moment is, look, showing weakness is a strength. Showing weakness is a strength. We are all about that, and it's just, we try not to use mental health. We talk about improving yourself, and it's just the simple things that there's not one thing that I can tell you that's going to make everything okay. But if you make that first step and talk about it, then we can start the ball rolling there. So it's about talking. And I was at a Alcoholics Awareness Forum recently, and Alcoholics Anonymous Awareness Forum, sorry, and one of the things I took away from it was one of the guys said, the first time I went to a meeting, somebody told me, take the cotton buds out your ears and stick them in your mouth. Just listen and leave a second after people are talking and see if they go again and get everything out. So I think there's value in talking. There's also value in listening to people as well.
Yeah, and that, I suppose from my takeaway and the way that I've understood mental health over the last 5 years, what's helped me go from 3 or 4 panic attacks a day to none in the last 5 years was take an interest in yourself, right? We all have Fitbits to look at our step count, our heart rate, our sleep rate. We all want to become healthier, stronger, live longer lives, be more successful as men. But we forget the one thing that gets us out of bed in the morning, our brains. We don't focus on our minds, our mental health. So for me, it's just understand your own mental health, understand yourself and what works best for you in the same way that you do for your exercise and your physical health, because they're so aligned. And if you do that, you'll start to be able to have these conversations, and you'll be able to facilitate these conversations. You'll feel strong in yourself to be able to talk and listen to other people and your friends, your family, taking people on that journey with you. So for me, it's become self-aware in yourself. Just learn about yourself, because humans are interesting, right? Men are interesting. We have a lot to say, but we keep it hidden up, right? And, you go to the pub, people will talk about sports, they'll talk about work, they'll talk about, whatever's going on, but they'll never talk about themselves. And that's something we need to change. Why are we not talking about ourselves? Why are we not talking about how we feel? And so that's where I would change it. And I don't know, Bob, if you want to kind of leave us with one takeaway from your perspective.
Just a quick one, because I actually agree with everybody's takes. It is very much about just taking that first step and talking. The one thing that I walked away from is that when you have a headache, you just take some aspirin. You go and take an ibuprofen or whatever, but you do something about it if you've got a headache, because you know that you can take a pill for that. Now, when you have a mental health issue, it may come on slowly. It may, be quite, a long effect. But at the end of the day, if you don't realize it, if you've got to start to realize that you have a mental health problem. And once you do that, once you accept that, then just talking to somebody, be it the doctor or be it your friend or whatever. And, you know, sitting in the car is the perfect thing for a lot of men, because you're both facing forward and there's not that eye contact. You don't feel as awkward and all that stuff, and you kind of just chat. So it's actually an ideal situation for sort of breaking the ice if you're in a car. It's like when you have an argument with your partner, it's always, you know, it's better to have an argument when one of them's driving, because then they just look where they're going. But it's you know, having that space to just talk to somebody about how you feel, and they may give you the right advice or the wrong advice, but the fact that you've raised it and that you've acknowledged it in yourself will help you get to that next step, where you look for help online and you look for signposts of where to go. And people like, you know, Martin's and Steve's and Finian's and Emily's, you know, areas and spaces where they can get help. I think that's what's important. So.
And yeah, so thank you everyone. I really appreciate it. Honestly, this is such an important topic. It's so good to get everyone's point of views, insights, tips. I think people listening to this will be able to take things away. Also, for any businesses listening, please do check out all of the companies. We'll be posting a load of information about Emily's work, Martin's, Finian's, Steve's work, because we need to be doing this. We need to be pushing this conversation further. Into the workplace is the easiest way to do it, because everyone turns up for that, right? So that's a great place to start, and then we can filter it out into their personal lives and make a real difference. So thank you very much for being here. It's been an amazing roundtable. I've learned so much, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your evening and weekend.
You too, Charlie. Nice to meet you all.
And you
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.